VRS has done something that is highly controversial. It's either brilliant or horrifying, and it's for you to decide which. Some background: the 20Nm VRS Direct Force Pro wheelbase is my favourite of all. It just speaks to me. I love this chunky industrial thing for numerous reasons. It's my base of choice. But now you can buy a lower priced and upgradable 6, 9, 12 or 15Nm version of the DFP wheelbase. However, when they say upgradable, they mean it. You can upgrade the 6Nm wheelbase through all the higher tiers until it becomes a full 20Nm base, and it remains the exact same physical wheelbase throughout. However, VRS is achieving this in a way that's gutsy to say the least. My reaction to it was the same as many of you to begin with. I did not like the idea at all, but time has passed, cooler heads prevail, I've had time to think about both sides of the argument. There are two very different ways you can interpret what VRS is doing, and trust me, I will give you my full viewpoint of both sides, good and bad. But I'll also be testing each force tier so you can decide whether or not VRS might be onto something, so do stick around for the whole video. Before going any further, I am a VRS affiliate. I do love my VRS hardware, and if you decide to join me on that, you can get 5% off VRS via the link in the video description. However, affiliate does not mean employee. I am completely free to tell you how I feel about it all, good and bad, and I will. Bear in mind also that prices and availability can vary a bit per region, so take any prices mentioned as a rough guide, yours might be different. First, let me explain what the VRS upgradable wheelbase is and what the benefits are with an uncynical mindset. Don't worry though, the critique will come later. The Upgradeable Direct Force Pro, or uDFP, is a cheaper 6, 9, 12 or 15Nm version of their standard Direct Force Pro wheelbase, which is normally 20Nm, and that's that. This is how it's been for a few years, and their DFP wheelbase is already decent value, but with the new upgradable system, VRS now has something to offer lower budgets. The price of each tier scales fairly linearly with the power rating you choose, so you could pay €449 for the 6Nm version, up to €749 for the 15Nm version, with the only upgrade above that being the full standard 20Nm. Once you have your wheelbase, whatever force tier you chose, at any time you can unlock any of the higher power levels via an unlock code which you purchase from VRS, and you only pay the difference between the tier you're on and the tier you're going to. You apply that unlock key to your wheelbase controller via software, which instantly and permanently unlocks more power on that wheelbase. At no point in the process do you actually have to fit new hardware or turn a single bolt or screw. The equipment attached to your rig is already fully capable of it, and it's only limited by the control box. The practical advantages of such a system are both very clear and very interesting. This allows people to buy in to VRS hardware at a lower level for a lower price, and then step it up in power and cost over time, with a lot less hassle and loss of value along the way. This one physical wheelbase would be the only one you'd need from the beginning of your sim racing journey to the peak, and by upgrading it in place with an unlock key, you don't need to wait for new hardware to arrive, you don't need to worry about selling your old hardware off at second-hand prices to offset the cost. This one single wheelbase remains installed on your rig and stays there all the way through. Every time you upgrade and have to sell old kit, you do lose a lot of value. This avoids that. Not only that, but regardless of the power tier you buy, even at the minimum 6Nm tier, you are still getting a wheelbase that is physically built for the high end and rated to handle full power and carries a 3-year warranty, so you should have nothing to fear durability wise. From a purely logical point of view, VRS's approach makes total sense, and the practical benefits to customers are truly groundbreaking. I've never seen this done before in the world of sim racing hardware, at least. Think about it, almost all of us that are already at full spec would have loved the option to have something like this, and those that aren't yet even on the ladder clearly will love it. The ability to just magically unlock more power without having to jump ship to a whole different setup, but that was just not the way things worked. Surely no company could reasonably invent a way to have a single wheelbase that covers the whole range. Well, VRS has, not through inventive hardware, but a pretty unique sales model. So before I dive into the criticisms, let's actually take a look at it. Let's take a look at each force tier and try it out. VRS have confirmed the power settings I need to use to emulate each tier, so although I have a full 20Nm base, I can cap it to the same limits that the upgradable controller does, and it will behave the same as the 6, 9, 12 or 15Nm versions would. At the 6Nm tier, the Wheelbase feels a touch stronger than the Moza R5 in terms of power, much stronger than the 5Nm CSL-DD, more on par with the 8Nm boosted CSL-DD in fact. 6Nm is strong enough to start creating proper feelings of weight transfer and suspension shocks that are legitimately useful to you as a sim racer and mark the beginning of true immersion, but you will still lack the feeling of heavy cornering forces in the mid-corner, which does make a big difference to both experience and consistency. That's where the stronger levels will start to shine. This will be especially true if you're using bigger steering wheels over 300mm in diameter. It's exceptionally smooth nonetheless, certainly smoother and sturdier feeling than the earlier mentioned CSL-DD and Moza R5. So whilst the maximum power is capped to a similar level to those two, there's more to it than just power for sure. Bought individually, the uDFP 6 works out at 415 quid with a hub, which is basically a requirement for attaching wheels to the VRS wheelbase, so I will include that in all my sums. The CSL-DD boosted works out at around 375. The Moza R5 isn't sold individually, but could be considered as costing slightly less once you deconstruct the R5 bundle. Bundles can influence the cost with discounts and such sort, but overall the uDFP 6 is one of the costlier options around the entry level. To choose this over those, you're doing it because you can see the benefit over time. It is considerably more professional and heavy duty in nature, and that 3-year warranty is a big factor. At the 9Nm tier, this is the transition point where things start feeling serious, and this does feel more like a 10 or 11Nm level than 9 to me. You will now begin to feel high loads in mid-corner, which will give you a stark sensation of weight transfer, suspension strain, and tyres gripping into the track. For some of you, this is where you're going to start feeling like the car really fights back, because curbs and contours will start to deflect your steering wheel quite sharply, and you will no longer feel like you're just gliding over the track. Working out at around £498 with a hub, that is more than a Moza R9 at $399, but I'd take a uDFP 9 over a Moza R9 any day. The difference in smoothness and perceived physical durability is clear to me. They are in different leagues in that regard. At the 12Nm tier, this is where ambiguity truly leaves the room. This is strong. Regardless of your age or Weetabix consumption levels, the uDFP 12 will argue back. 12Nm has long been my recommended sweet spot in terms of cost versus experience. You'll be getting a very full-blooded experience at this tier. Cars will start to feel genuinely heavy, downforce will start to really mean something as you begin to feel the grip of the tyres through the middle of corners. Sections of track that might have previously felt like you're just waiting for the turn to end will now become sections of a track where you're wishing for the turn to end, and the very character of some tracks will be unrecognisable. The S's at Road Atlanta, for example, will now become something to fear. At around £580 of a hub, this is more expensive than a Moza R12 at $459, but cheaper than the Simagic Alpha Mini at $605. Cheaper than the Aces La Prima at $629 and I would pick the uDFP 12 over all of those based on what I've experienced. At 15Nm, this is what I would consider a full stomach. I've actually been running my DFP wheelbase at this level pretty much. The main difference between 12Nm and 15Nm is found in the middle of corners, where the cars are cornering with the maximum amount of G-force and the tyres are on the edge of adhesion. I do find it easier to sense the grip through long or swooping corners at this higher power level. 15Nm or above would be of most interest to experienced sim racers that are capable of scooping out the finer details of the car. At around $662 with a hub, this is cheaper than a Moza R16 at $698 and much cheaper than a Simagic Alpha at $865. And of course, the full 20Nm is just the full unbridled wheelbase. This is for those that don't want to leave any doubt on the table or are planning to use heavier or larger wheels. There's not much more to say other than that whilst the lower tiers tend to cost more than the competition, the VRS wheelbase is strongest value when it's at its strongest. At the time of writing, the DFP 20 is on sale for $703 including a hub, which for a full grade 20Nm base, and one I actually prefer over some much more expensive wheelbases, that's damn good value. In short, 6Nm is a good start, but you're going to feel the need for 9Nm in short order. The bug will bite. 9Nm is powerful, but 12Nm is straight up argumentative and a good option for the serious sim racer. 15Nm is the ultimate experience, 20Nm is just to cover all bases and applications. At lower levels, the uDFP tends to cost more than the competition, but at higher levels that switches over and the uDFP tends to cost less. But all levels carry a 3-year warranty and feature the exact same professional grade components, and trust me when I say it feels bomb-proof. Now there are two types of people in the world, those that heard all of that and thought awesome, and those that heard all of that and started reaching for the pitchforks. One of my philosophies is that if you haven't seen something done before, it's probably for good reason, and in this case it's because a lot of people hate the very idea of the sales model being pitched here, and they do not want it to become the norm. I am somewhere in the middle. I appreciate the practical benefits of the concept, and I think I would have actually gone for the uDFP if it had been available years ago, but I also can't help feel that it risks opening a can of worms. If we get here, how many steps away are we from some manufacturer out there getting the bright idea of charging a subscription for wheelbases, requiring an internet connection to check in, basically costing us much more over time? As I understand it, the uDFP doesn't require an internet connection to upgrade, so in theory there's no way for VRS to remotely interfere with your system like some would fear. Upgrades are permanent and thus transferable if sold, and the price of the upgrades are just the difference in cost. You don't pay a penalty for doing it in steps. For all intents and purposes, although the general concept is controversial, I do think VRS are doing it in the most consumer-friendly way they can. When you think about it, there are countless industries whereby it's the norm to pay for tiered performance. Fiber internet, for example, you could pay a lower amount for a lower speed, or you could pay more for higher speeds, but nothing physically changes with the line coming to your house. It's just that you're allowed to access the higher speeds by the central control box somewhere. Online subscriptions are almost entirely done this way too. Everywhere you turn you'll find basic, pro and unlimited tiers with features locked behind nothing but an artificial paywall. Many industries get away with it because it's the norm, but people will oppose what VRS is doing because they fear it's a gateway to this becoming the norm for physical items in sim racing too. It's a valid reaction and it's one I shared. I think it's completely natural if your response to this is initially, oh no. I saw someone frame it in a genius way. Imagine all houses are built with 4 bedrooms, but you can buy them with 1, 2, 3 or all 4 bedrooms unlocked. If you buy a 2-bedroom version, for example, you can access 2 bedrooms, but the other 2 are locked unless you pay to unlock them, and they're always there even if you never actually do. In cold, hard, logical terms, this is really practical because you haven't actually had to pay for those extra bedrooms yet. But if you ever need more bedrooms and you can finally afford it, you can just unlock them. You wouldn't need to spend months selling, buying, moving, losing loads of money and time in the process. Moving house is a huge pain, so having a house that you can just upgrade later without having to move is surely a good thing. But in warm, squishy, real human terms, it would be quite dystopian and dehumanizing to actually live and exist in a house whereby a portion of it is out of bounds unless you pay more. Any house developer that tried to employ this scheme in real life would become headline news across the world, regardless of how honest or fair the developer went about it. This is not a house, it's much smaller stakes, of course, nowhere near the same moral quandary. But it is the same kind of thing, even if it's scaled down. If you buy a physical item, you would expect to be able to use all of the features and capabilities of that item as intended, as built. And no matter how proportional or fairly done, a lot of people will dislike any sales model that challenges that. So why has VRS done all of this? Well, up until now, VRS has only had one wheelbase to offer, the Direct Force Pro. And although it's a cracking wheelbase, like I said, my favourite so far, it's too expensive for people just getting started. It's a good thing to have smaller, cheaper wheelbases available so that people can be introduced to them earlier in the chain. VRS clearly wants to entice people into their hardware system at a lower price point without having to manufacture a whole range of different wheelbases at different power levels, which is costly, risky and complicated for a company of VRS's size. Rather than pump untold amounts of money into developing a range of wheelbases, they're packaging their existing wheelbase in a new way that they're hoping pays off well in the end. They can just survive the initial backlash. I actually believe that I would do exactly the same in their shoes, otherwise I couldn't stand a chance against the bigger names in the game. The downside to VRS's approach, but it essentially lifts the veil on their pricing structure and business practices and exposes them to armchair analytics, just like the kind I'm doing now. Looking at the pricing structure, everyone has concluded that one of two things must be true. Either VRS are taking a loss when they supply the uDFP at lower power levels and hoping it'll pay off and start making profit when people upgrade them, or they're supplying the lower power levels at cost and everything above it is all profit. It's only for them to know. So my final thoughts. Ultimately, the benefits of a uDFP system are all real, physical, numerous and tangible. The fact that you can upgrade it all the way from minimum to maximum for less money and hassle than the traditional route is a big deal. It takes a lot of the risk out of choosing. The drawbacks are all philosophical, and I don't say that to minimize them. It is a divisive and controversial move, one which nobody else seems to have dared to try. That means that there's a funnel of people that will love this and it will do wonders for them, and a funnel of people that will hate it purely on principle, and both camps are right. For those that love it, this is a genuinely attractive new option to avoid having to hop through the traditional upgrade path, and it does help that the underlying product itself, the DFP Wheelbase, is an excellent product. I probably wouldn't bother making this video if it wasn't. I'm pretty certain that everyone that buys a uDFP will upgrade to more power fairly quickly because the sim racing bug is strong and the barrier to upgrade is so much lower here than anywhere else that it will be hard to talk yourself out of it. And VRS seem to be betting on exactly that. So what's your viewpoint? Tell me in the comments. Did you know about this? What do you think of it now? What's your take? And thanks for watching. Cheers again.